Good morning. We'd like to start by thanking the Alliance for having us and the team at ALS Hope Foundation for their continued support. Yesterday's presentations are a hard act to follow, but we'll give it a shot. I'm Cassandra Haddad, Vice Chair of End the Legacy. I come from an SOD1 A5V ALS family, and I'm a genetic carrier. Like so many other people at risk, my family has been decimated by ALS for generations. Pictured here is my grandfather, Harold, who died just before our gene was discovered, my uncle Dwayne, who died 3 years ago while in the Valor trial, and my mother, Cindy, who died just last year. Before the advent of End the Legacy, I had nowhere to go for support or information other than my own frantic Google searches and hours spent scouring research articles on what, if anything, I could do for myself. There was no one else I could talk to like me or like my family. I've been in medicine over 20 years, and I had never met another genetic ALS family. Despite working full-time, navigating my mother's ALS journey, participating in multiple clinical trials, and, my favorite, being a twin mom, I have made supporting the mission of End the Legacy a priority because this organization is paramount to my life, my future, and my children's future.
Good morning. I'm Jean Swidler. Along with Cassandra, I participate in End the Legacy and am the current first executive director. So my name is on this slide, but I thought I would give you some background more on my mother's experience with ALS in her life. So my mother was born in 1948, and then when she was a young woman in the late 1960s, her grandfather, James Moore, pictured here, was diagnosed with ALS, and she remarked that he would just lie on the couch and did not participate in conversations as he was slowly paralyzed. After that, 20 years later, when my mom was in her early 40s, her mother, my grandmother Lillian, pictured here a few months before her death in 1990 at the age of 67, was sensed trouble when she could not ascend a tour bus step in Ireland, and was at first diagnosed with Parkinson's, but soon it was an ALS diagnosis. Her brain was donated at Columbia in 1990. So after that, my mother, with 4 kids and career as a librarian, spent the next many decades very anxious about developing ALS, and she would talk about it all the time to everyone. She would talk about it to her doctor, but nothing was really done for her with that risk, and nobody would really engage on it. It just seemed like a neurotic thing. Even at this picture at my wedding in beautiful Oakland, California, my mom brought it up with my future in-laws and my fiance about her fear of developing ALS. Well, 6 months after that photo was taken, she developed 2 drop feet and had a positive Babinski reflex and was finally referred to a neurologist. The neurologist diagnosed her with peripheral neuropathy unexplained and did not order genetic testing despite her entreaties about her family history. 10 months later, after developing weakness in her right hand and bulbar issues, she was finally diagnosed with ALS. You can see her in this photo surrounded by her siblings a few months after her diagnosis. In the top right of that photo is my Aunt Joanne. My mother was the oldest of 7 siblings. My Aunt Joanne was the youngest of 7 siblings, and she died of ALS a few months ago. My mom died at age 70 in 2019 after just 16 months of a diagnosis. So that was my mom's story. Now, that was her personal experience of having nowhere to turn, of having no way to have this fear of her reflected or touched on. The broader picture was, next slide please, that for many years there was no dedicated support groups and limited ways for people in our position to connect. No representation of our community when issues impacting us were being discussed. And the at-risk community, for those of you who are in New York or other communities that have subway systems where there's 2 tracks and then a third electrified rail, people use the phrase, oh, things are a third rail, like you can't touch them. So the at-risk community was considered a third rail situation by many. So it was too volatile to really mess with. And our health in relation to our risk, as you could see in my mother's experience, was never considered at all. So we knew that there was other ways that communities could be organized. So there actually had been other models of patient-led adult onset inherited disease communities that had been around. For instance, the Huntington's Disease Youth Organization, which Melinda has worked so closely with. There's, of course, a large hereditary cancer community, including Facing Hereditary Cancer at Empowered or FORCE. And there's even a organization led by some wonderful people impacted by dominantly inherited early onset Alzheimer's called Young Timers. So we knew that people could get together and do this. So Cassandra, I, and many others came together and created Genetic ALS and FTD and the Legacy. This is our mission statement. We did this to provide educational and support resources to encourage and promote research about and advocate for the genetic ALS and FTD community. So we are working on a number of issues with all of these areas. We have webinars and educational content on our website. We are doing advocacy where we can. Hello, that's what we're doing here. And we are engaging in talking to the federal government, the NIH, and other folks, FDA, about research priorities for us as well as the research community. But I wanted Cassandra to talk about a little of the support work we're doing.
And the Legacy provides peer support through multiple avenues. In addition to the relationships that our members develop with one another, like Jean and I, we hold a dedicated monthly support hour. We designed this program after consulting with licensed social workers who worked in other related disease spaces, like the at-risk Huntington's community. This session is led by one of our own members, Lindy Jacobs, who is a registered nurse. In this dedicated support space, in addition to this, we also hold a weekly meeting that Jean will detail a bit later. We collected data on the impact of these two support options. I think that might be a level 5 from yesterday's presentation. And first we'll discuss the impact of the peer support group on the attendees. The group takes place every third Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time. Attendance over the survey period included 26 people over 5 sessions, 10 people on average per session, and our survey did demonstrate the value of this offering, including the following responses. When asked if you felt the support hour was beneficial to you, 100% said yes, it was. If asked, do you intend to come to future sessions, all respondents either would come to another session or would at least consider it. And perhaps the best feedback on the peer support group came from the individual responses to the question, do you think the ability to connect with other impacted people is important, and if so, why? So we have a few quotes. Overall, they indicated a need for support outside of family members, a sense of community, and an appreciation for sharing of resources. So here's a few of our quotes. Yes, I can't talk to anyone who truly understands in my day-to-day life. Even my siblings and other relatives don't like to engage on it. To be with others in the same position as me is reassuring and makes me feel better about what I'm going through. And yes, family dynamics are sometimes so dynamic that having a neutral group to speak with allows different conversations to occur.
So the other avenue that we have, in addition to our dedicated support hour, is just that we're working together as a community. So I don't know if y'all know Daniel Barvin, but he really jump-started our group in 2020 when he posted about the Huntington's Disease Youth Organization and shared, hey, why don't we have anything like this for us? So that's how we got started. And then we kind of coalesced through 21 and 2022. And then we officially launched as the nonprofit and the Legacy in January 2023. The main form of participation for our members is weekly meetings where we have about 20 impacted people each week. These are different people depending upon whether they can make that week or so. For instance, we looked at how many participated in the first 6 months of 2023, and we had 55 people who participated in 5 or more meetings. So those are 5 hours of volunteer time to these meetings that these people have given. Topics in the meetings include pertinent news to our community, debate on issues impacting us, and plans for how we will engage with industry, regulators, and researchers. So we also decided to survey this group of folks. We knew that some had considered engaging on the topic of your risk for these diseases might be like poking at a scab, and maybe very bad for people to contemplate this risk that they have. So we surveyed our 55 people, 33 responded. So first up, we asked people how they were impacted by genetic ALS and FTD, and a majority are people who know they have a mutation and are asymptomatic. I do want to highlight that 24% are loved ones of someone at risk, and we learned through this process that we had missed something. Of course, we know that spouses or friends would be considered loved ones, but in that bucket also were people who tested negative for the gene in their family. And we learned that we really have to come up with a term for those people because they should be able to identify themselves in a way that honors their shared traumatic past, even if their future might be a little different. We also asked if people feel more or less optimistic about their future and being at risk since becoming involved. And about 70% said they feel more optimistic. Only one person said that they feel less optimistic. We asked folks about their interest in research participation, and over 63% of folks said that they were more likely to participate in interventional or observational research after being involved in the group. We honed in on that. Of course, no matter what, there will be some level of distress knowing that you are at risk for a terrible disease, at great risk for a terrible disease. So we asked people if their levels of distress had changed or gone up or down since becoming involved in the group. And over 90% of attendees shared that their feelings of distress in relation to their risk did not change or went down. And then finally, we asked, how has being involved in an organized genetic ALS and FTD community impacted your overall sense of well-being? And the vast majority, close to 76%, said that it has led to a greater overall sense of well-being than before they became involved.
So we talked a little bit about AI yesterday, and we actually did use AI to analyze our responses to the open-ended question and discovered several common themes. So community and support in reference to the question of, in your own words, how has being involved impacted you, and what would you tell people about the group? Multiple individuals mentioned finding a sense of belonging and support within the group, feeling less alone, and feeling the challenges associated with familial ALS and FTD. Empowerment and advocacy. Many express a newfound sense of empowerment to make a difference, advocating for themselves and future generations affected by the disease. They're driven to bring about change and are proactive in seeking solutions. Purpose and hope. Being involved has given them a sense of purpose, hope, and a positive outlook despite the difficulties. They see potential for change and progress in research and policy that might impact their lives and the lives of others. Education and information. Being part of the group has provided education, information, and connections to others in similar situations, allowing for shared knowledge and learning from each other's experiences. Overall, these responses reflect a strong sense of unity, determination, shared commitment to advocate, support, and work towards finding solutions for familial ALS and FTD. There were so many individual responses to the question that we would love to share. A few highlights include, being involved in End the Legacy has helped me feel less isolated in the sea of uncertainty and anguish that familial ALS and FTD brings. The collective motivation, passion, strength of its members provides desperately needed hope for the future and creates a voice that deserves to be heard loud and clear. The help and support from End the Legacy is immense. Being part of a group of gene carriers and those at risk means everything. You don't need to explain the trauma that you experience because everyone automatically understands. A few more. I found like-minded trailblazers that help erase any doubt one might have when it comes to genetic testing. The decision is not taken lightly. Knowing people who can ultimately benefit from such a decision helps. It made me realize how much of an impact I can make in policy, research, and in my ALS community. And perhaps the most poignant response is this one. from a gene-positive carrier in their 30s who's been involved with the group since 2022. I no longer feel alone. But there are people out there who do feel alone and who don't know about our community and our work. You can help the genetic ALS and FTD community by directing impacted people to our website for more information and our support group for those who are looking for connections. You can also help by continuing to include us as members of the genetic community in any discussions about us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that fantastic presentation. Do we have any questions? Surprisingly, Kathy Cummings over here has a question.
I do have a mic. Thanks. I have a question too. Thank you for your presentation. I'm curious. So with my ALS Association hat on, we have spent a lot of time focused on genetic discrimination, and so in the United States, many of our insurance carriers use genetic testing against people in order to prevent them from getting insurance coverage. Not just health insurance, life insurance, and there's been some federal legislation on that. And so I'm curious of the members that you have so far and maybe the behind-the-scenes conversations, if that's been part of any kind of conversation you're having, how to recruit people and maybe break through some of those barriers. And by the way, I would love to talk to you more about how we might be able to work together on some of these really significant issues.
Well, thank you so much for that, and we're always happy to talk to any and everyone, so that would be so lovely, and thank you for the nice question. So genetic discrimination is horrible. Certainly in insurance products, it's really bad. We do support expanding GINA to include those other insurances. We do need to be cognizant that it's possible that insurance companies are getting all they need from asking about family history, and the impact of genetics on insurance discrimination may not be that severe. For instance, Florida, through the push of the Speaker of the State Assembly in 2020, he basically just single-handedly passed an expansion of GINA in Florida that outlawed genetic discrimination in long-term care and life insurance, and I have not heard of any big shakeup in the insurance industry due to that. So I do wonder how much it's actually happening, because they are still allowed to ask people about their family history with or without genetics. But it is important, and we do want to take care of it. And Cassandra, I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, we do have a genetic counselor as a member of our group, which we're incredibly fortunate to have her.
We have a few.
Yeah. And we do talk a lot about that in our group. So what else was I? Oh, we are also working at the state and federal level to work on GINA legislation. We have a member who's really active in the state of Maryland right now. So we're working on it. We're trying. We'll work together.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. My question is a little bit different because it's not based in the U.S. So, Cassandra, building on your call to action that you just had at the end of your presentation, we have a number of, obviously, international groups here. So are there other groups in the world that are doing the same work as you? And also, what is your footprint and mandate? Is it U.S.-based or is it international-based? And could you just speak a little bit more about that call to action with an international lens? Thanks.
Sure. I think we have 6 countries now represented in our groups. The tricky part, as all of you know, is time zones. So certainly we would love to expand our support hour to include more time zones. We're a 100% volunteer-run organization, so we need continued funding to be able to expand.
Yeah, language, of course, is an issue. So right now there's just no other effort like this in the world. And so we do speak for the global genetic community because no one else is, so somebody has to. But we welcome other people getting involved in other places. We do have people in Europe, Australia, Singapore, Israel, who come to meetings and are pretty active, UK, Ireland. Of course, we'd love to collaborate with anyone and everyone, and the issue of us all mainly speaking English is a serious one that we need to overcome, and welcome anyone helping push the community getting organized globally in different languages forward.
Thank you. Melinda.
Question. Is this on? Kevin Robinson from Niels asks, do you see gaps or opportunities for government or philanthropic funding to support asymptomatic genetic carriers? If that is something you have or are pursuing, could you share your thoughts?
Thanks, Kevin. We're big fans of yours, so thank you for the great question. Yeah, no, any philanthropist, please hit us up. We do applaud the government and other folks, including many in this room, like the ALS Association and others who have supported longitudinal ALS research for many years, and we think that's awesome. We do think that perhaps those studies could also work more closely with us, so that might be a way to kind of bridge those two areas. And we do appreciate that the NIH, when they talked about the ALS strategic plan, they put out the description for it and said the stakeholders for the plan were going to be people with ALS and their caregivers. And I emailed them and I said, hey, there's this large pool of people who are at genetic risk, and ALS research impacts us very directly. And they amended their scope to include people at genetic risk within 24 hours. And to this day, they still say that. So I've been very appreciative of that.
Thank you, Jean and Cassandra. Really appreciate you opening this conversation and bringing this community forward in a different way. Really appreciate your work.
Thank you.